Step closer. It's time for terror and tales. The Silent Oaks. Father Callahan stood at the edge of the Weller estate, gripping his crucifix tightly as he took in the eerie silence surrounding Silent Oaks. He had been called here to perform an exorcism on a young boy plagued by a dark presence, or so he thought. The local diocese had reached out after hearing of his skill, explaining that a family in desperate need awaited him in this secluded manor. As he stepped inside, he felt the chill of something unnatural in the air. The house was in disrepair, an old forgotten estate. Dust settled on every surface, and the walls held the damp, earthy smell of mold. His eyes scanned the rooms until he found the boy strapped to a bed in one of the bedrooms. His wrists and ankles were bound to prevent him from hurting himself. The boy's face was thin eyes glazed, and a strange smile crept across his lips. A smile that chilled Father Callahan to the core. As he prepared for the ritual, he thought he heard faint whispers echoing down the hall. He shrugged them off as tricks of the mind. He was here for Ethan, and he had a duty to save him. Father Callahan took a deep breath, pulling out his Bible and sprinkling holy water on the boy. "I command you to leave this child," he intoned, voice steady. "In the name of God, release him." The boy's smile widened, and he began to laugh, a chilling, fractured sound that reverberated through the room. "You think this will work? Don't you know by now, Father, that there's no one here to save?" Confused but undeterred, he pressed on, reciting verse after verse, each word heavy with purpose. Yet as he continued, flashes of memories began to surface in his mind. Snatches of a woman's voice, a child's laughter, long-forgotten moments of a life he couldn't quite place. His concentration wavered, and the boy's mocking laughter grew louder. "You don't remember, do you?" the boy sneered. His face twisted, his voice echoing as though it came from the walls themselves. "There is no family, no Weller estate, no call for help. It's just you and me, Dad." He staggered back, his mind reeling. He tried to dismiss the words as tricks of the demon, but as he looked around, he noticed for the first time that the room was in shambles, empty of any sign of a family. The memories came rushing back like a flood, fragments of a reality he had desperately tried to bury. Ethan was not a stranger's son. Ethan was his own. Years ago, in a moment of desperation, he had bound his son to this very bed, convinced that the boy was possessed, that he had been taken over by something evil. In his fractured mind, he had twisted reality, creating the illusion of an exorcism, of a calling from the diocese of a family who had reached out to him for help. But it was his own broken psyche that had orchestrated it all. Ethan lay there weak and emaciated, his hollow eyes filled with the despair that pierced Father Callahan to his core. With a tremor in his voice, Father Callahan whispered, "Ethan, what have I done?" The boy's expression softened, the mocking smile fading, replaced by the look of a child who had been abandoned for far too long. "You left me here, Dad. You left me here alone." He fell to his knees, the weight of his actions suffocating. He had been consumed by his own delusions, his guilt and grief twisted into the warped belief that his son had been possessed, trying to save his child from a non-existent evil. But as the truth bore down on him, panic surged through him. He couldn't accept this reality, the horror of his actions too great to bear. He clutched his head, shaking it violently, trying to drown out the memories, the guilt, the piercing gaze of his son. "No," he shouted, desperation turning to mania. "This isn't real. You're not real. You're just a demon." He grabbed the crucifix and began to chant again, words spilling from his lips in a frenzy. But the house was silent, the shadows receding. Ethan lay motionless, and Father Callahan could feel the weight of truth pressing down like a suffocating blanket. With tears streaming down his face, he looked at the boy one last time, the child he had failed, the son he had left behind. I can't do this," he gasped. And in that moment, something inside him snapped. Desperation clawed at him as he reached for the delusion once more, retreating into the comforting arms of his fractured mind. He cast aside the truth, replacing it with the familiar shadows of his fabrications. He stood abruptly, steeling himself, determination filling his voice. "No more! I will save you," he declared. And with renewed fervor, he resumed the ritual, reciting the words that had brought him solace in his darkest moments. As he plunged deeper into his delusion, the air grew thick with shadows, and the walls of Silent Oaks began to pulse around him. He was lost now, fully ensnared in a labyrinth of his own, making a world where he could still be the savior. He chanted louder, a cacophony of denial filling the air, and for a moment it felt as if the house itself embraced him, shielding him from the haunting truth. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for your daily dose of terror. This tale ends, but the terror lives on. Your turn. Suggest a story for our next tale in the comments.